For all the latest on the SaWGuy podcast, be sure to subscribe and don't forget that bell icon.
Hello, and welcome to the SaWGuy podcast.
Like scary movies? What's your favorite scary movie?
Here's Johnny.
We'll tear your soul apart.
The boogeyman is real, and you found him.
Game over, man. Game over.
What do you want?
I want to hear you scream.
Stop the prime time, bitch!
Welcome to the SaWGuy podcast. As always, y'all know I am the SaWGuy, and you're joining me for a very special episode because tonight is the night before Christmas. That's right, I'm talking about it right now. It is Christmas Eve, and, in order for me to celebrate Christmas, it wouldn't be, a jolly old St. Christmas without SaWGuy, and I'm bringing you episode 41 on Black Christmas, the remake. I know a lot of people are kind of disappointed that I'm talking about the remake and not the original, but don't worry. I'll tie in a little bit of the remake with the original, so that way, nobody's left out on this. I mean, it's the season to be jolly, right? But anyways, yes, I am talking about the remake. And what I love about the remake is just that it's so uncanny and that it's so just like all over the place that it makes it good, at least in my opinion. I know a lot of people, they didn't like it. I know when it was released in theaters, everybody hated it. But for some reason, it built up this cult following, like when it came out on DVD in February. It was kind of weird, But anyways, let me give you the backstory about Black Christmas. Black Christmas was a 1974 horror film, and it was the very first ever horror film that took place during a holiday. And out of all things, it took place on Christmas. And it was actually done at all places in Canada. Like, really? You would think it would have been like a grindhouse American film, but it's not. It was actually released in Canada as a horror film. And because of it, it sparked, all this intriguingness with it, I guess you could say it inspired Halloween because, without Black Christmas, you wouldn't have Halloween. It'd be the Babysitter Killers, right? And so forth. And then it inspired other films, like The House of Sorority Row, When a Stranger Calls Back. And after when it was released in the 70s, in the 80s, you would have thought, okay, they got to do a remake. But instead of doing a remake, the original creator, Bob Clark, he also directed the film. He went off to do A Christmas Story. And that's the film where the kid wants a Red Ryder BB gun, he shoots his eye out and shit. It's kind of funny that he did both of these films, a complete yin and yang, right? But anyways, in the 80s they didn't do it. The 90s there was some good remakes, but they never did it, Towards the early 2000s, that's when a lot more remakes started to come out, right? And then it wasn't until 2005 they said, okay, fuck it, we're going to go ahead and do a full-blown remake, and we're going to basically explain the backstory as to why Billy Lynch was crazy and had to go and kill everybody, right? Because they didn't explain that in the original. And if you're fans of the original one, let me know in the comments below. I mean, did you enjoy the remake, how it gave him a better backstory? Or was it a lot more terrifying, the fact that you just didn't know anything about him? He just snapped, right? But anyways, with this one, it was done by Glen Morgan, who was best friends with Bob Clark and had his blessing to say, okay, go ahead and do the remake. Glen Morgan, he's known in Hollywood because he wrote all the stories for, the first three Final Destination franchises. Well, not franchises, but films. He wrote the first one, the second one, the third one. Obviously now I think they're up to like 7. The last I heard of it, they did like a 3D one and all that, but that's what he's known for. And he basically got his hands on this project and said, okay, I'm going to write and I'm going to direct. And he got Dimension Films and MGM to help him out with the production, which, some people will say that's a downfall to it, but I'll explain a little bit more, right? But anyways, when he was doing that, he wanted to have a decent cast lineup, which was pretty cool. He brought Mary Elizabeth Winston over from Final Destination 3. He got, one of the original actors from Black Christmas to play as the house mother over there. And what I thought was pretty cool is just, he tried to do it as a wink and a callback to the original, just basically with his version in his mind. He thought he was going to do basically the remake, but it's going to have, like, the backstory of Billy Lynch, too. Like, kind of explain it. Like what Rob Zombie did to Halloween. that's what he tried to do because, mid 2000s, that was a trend going on. Everybody was doing that, whether it was a slasher film, whether it was a drama film or anything. That's how these remakes were doing it, whereas they were basically, giving a callback to it, but elaborating the story a little bit more, right? So, with this film, it was released in Christmas of 2006. I was one of the only people, besides two other people in my movie theater where I'm from, to actually go see it on Christmas Day. Now, I don't know if it was because it was Christmas and nobody wanted to go see a horror movie on Christmas Day, but I thought it was kind of cool. At the time when I first saw this film, it just kind of it's not bad, but it's not good, Now going back and actually watching it for this episode, I thought, wow, okay, this is really good for what it was, considering all the shit that they had to go through to endure this film, to actually get it out there, right? And I'll elaborate a little bit more on that, in just a bit. But as I do in every episode, I'm going to explain it, the whole story and everything, and give you all the little tidbits and everything. And there's a lot of tidbits on this one, and kind of fascinates me. I'm like, oh shit, well, I got to cut down on the story a lot more now for you to get my point across, right? But anyways, Black Christmas opens up. It shows, the fraternity house and everything, all these girls, one is drinking, staring out the window. The other one, her character, her name is Claire. She's, writing a greeting card and a gift for her sister Lee. Well, anyways, she hears a noise, right? And it's coming from her closet. She goes to her closet. She sees that, the noise is coming from the vent in the floor. Then she goes back and thinks nothing of it, right? She starts writing on the greeting card, and then she was like, wait a minute, my pen's missing. Boom, there's a bag that goes over her face. She's trying to breathe. Whack, that pin goes right through her eye, then it says Black Christmas. When I was in theaters, I was like, what the fuck? This is going to be some good-ass shit right here. I like that. As y'all know, I like a lot of slasher films. I like a lot of gore. That's my style of horror that I like, There's some things that I'll just kind of turn away, but for the most part, I'm never squeamish on anything like that. But this film, there are some scenes that did make me squeamish, right? And later on, after it showed that, then it talks about the story of Billy Lenz. He's locked up in a sanitarium. Everybody knows the myth of Billy Lenz, right? He's being watched by a security guard who's, who basically says that every Christmas, he tries to escape just to go home, right? And after that, then it flash forwards back to the sorority house, and it shows, Katie Cassidy, which we all know her as Black Canary right now, and she starred in other remakes too. And she plays the character of Kelly. And she's dating this guy, his name is Kyle, who's played by Oliver Hudson, who played the same fucking role in Scream Queens. He was a dad in this, and it was basically kind of weird, he did the same role twice, in the same premise of the film, I don't know. But they were dating, and she basically told him, hey, I want to spend time with you, but I gotta go spend time with my sisters. So, she bails on him, and he gets a phone call, and you find out what that phone call was about, right? Then she goes in, and then they, it's, it shows all the characters. The character who played the house mother on, what's her name? Andrea Martin. She was one of the original characters in it, and I was just like, whoa, that's pretty cool. That's a cool callback to it, Then you have Lacey Chabert, who's the voice, the original voice of Meg from Family Guy. Then you had the girl who played Harriet the Spy, which I thought was kind of funny that she was in the film because, she really wanted to do the film, and she got in it. Then you had, you had another character in there from Final Destination 3. She played the character of Lindsay. I forgot the actor's name. But she was in it. And you had a lot of different characters in this film. Like, it was a big sorority house. They put a lot of characters. So it was hard for me to follow. So if I mess up or fuck up or anything, let me know in the comments below. Because I know that was another knock on this film. There was so much going on, it was hard to follow, right? But anyways, it shows all of them. They're all kind of bickering. They're trying to do this Secret Santa thing. And then they have this little myth, this urban legend that, whenever they start Secret Santa, they basically get a gift for Billy, right? And then, while they're kind of bickering and all that, then basically they send two of the other girls, Lindsay and Kelly, to go up to get the other girls. One is Claire, who had the bag over her head, and she was the first one taken out. They don't know that she's missing. They just think, okay, she's, being quiet in her room. Then they go to this other girl. Her name's Megan. And Megan's watching, it looks like she's watching a porn on her computer, but it's actually her and Kelly's boyfriend. And then you find out that Kelly's boyfriend lives there, and he just dates the girls, and does things with them. And it was just like, what the fuck? Like, you find that out, like, that's kind of a trip. That's fucked up, right? And, while they're knocking on the door telling her, hey, you gotta open your Christmas present. If not, they're mine. Then she starts kind of having this attitude, and she's like, fuck Christmas, And then they go back, they try to open presents. And as they're doing that, Megan hears a noise in the attic, which I don't understand. You hear a fucking noise in the attic, you don't go and chase after it. What does she do? She goes up there, and she sees Claire kind of like with her head down. And then she's like, what the hell are you doing here, Claire? All of a sudden, the same person who put the bag over Claire and killed her does this to Megan. But he basically puts the bag over her, and then he shanks her. So blood is like fucking spraying all over. She's down. You know, he holds her down on her arms. And he puts his hand right there and rips out her fucking eyeball and eats it. I was like, what the fuck? You know, so, I mean, that hooked me in right there. Again, like I said, because I love slasher and gore films. Then it goes back into the story about how they were saying, oh, you know, this is kind of stupid. How come we got to do this? And then that's when Andrea Martin was telling them, well, you know, we do this because this actually really happened. And this was Billy's house. And then it kind of goes back into the backstory of how Billy was born. His mom didn't want him. And she had an affair with this young dude, and they never said anything about how young he was, but clearly he was way younger than her. And she didn't want to have a son. So she, you know, there's a Christmas tree next to the baby carriage. She pulls the light bulb out and breaks it in front of the baby. And then the baby ends up being Billy. And they start talking about how Billy had this, you know, rare liver disease, I guess it was. It's... I laugh because it's not rare. It's called jaundice. You know, it changes the skin to yellow. And, you know, I'm kind of a science nerd myself. I'm like, okay, well, you know, you wouldn't be able to do half the stuff in this film if you had that. But, you know, that was another kind of a downfall of this film. It had a lot of little plot holes here and there like that, right? So they explained a little bit of the story about Billy. And then, you know, this takes place in 1970 when he was born. In 1975, when he was 5 years old, you know, he's trying to spend Christmas with his dad, and his mom's just, you know, being a bitch, like, Santa's not coming for you. He got shot down by the Russians. You know, and then his dad's like, hey, go in your room, and Santa left a present for you. He goes in his room, he opens it up, and he has, like, this rocket ship, this model rocket ship, which was pretty cool. You know, he was a good dad. And then you can hear, you know, all the muffling, like, because they were arguing. I had to put on the subtitles on the DVD to actually understand it, because I couldn't hear it. But anyways, he was, you know, she basically said to him, like, hey, that's not the son I want. And then he said, well, why are you being a bitch? You know, you could be mean to me all you want, just not towards our kid. And then she's like, well, I'm leaving you for this guy. He's going to be my husband now. And he's like, what the fuck, this piece of shit? You know, and then I guess they implied that he was, like, trying to threaten him with a hammer. And then that's when his mom came up and knocked him out with a fucking hammer. Billy hears all this, comes out of his room, and he looks underneath the door. Like, I guess you could say in that space in between the door and the floor. He sees his dad's knocked out, then they put the bag over him, beat the shit out of him, right? And then it shows how they, you know, try to bury him underneath the house. Well, Billy, he finds out that the house is hollow. Like, there's, like, space in between the walls. So he breaks into the walls and goes in and out of the house. And he goes down and he sees everything of how they're trying to bury his dad. And then that's when, you know, his mom and her boyfriend, they flip out. He climbs all the way up and gets stuck in the attic, and they locked him in the attic. Then it goes back to the girls, and they talk about, like, that's what happened with the story, you know? They didn't explain anything else until later on. Then as they're arguing, you know, they're just like, fuck this, you know, I'm gonna go home. And, you know, it's just every one of the girls, they had a different sense of personality. One just wanted to party. One was just there to hang out. Another one was just there because, you know, her family didn't want her there. Things like that. I mean, it played a lot of that aspect. I mean, they did really good on the development of it, but it's just, you know, it was too much. You know, it didn't get straight to the point, right? But anyways, one of the girls, you know, Mary Elizabeth Winston, her character, Heather, she was arguing with Lindsay and was like, you know what, I'm gonna go home. So as she's trying to go up the stairs, you see another girl pop out. Her name's Eve. And she's like, Merry Christmas, everybody. You guess you guys are all my family now. And they implied her as, like, the Poindexter or the nerd character because she had her hair tied up. She was wearing the glasses. She made a gift for Heather. Heather opens it. And what I thought was crazy is that it's a you know, hand-blown glass of a unicorn. But the fucking horn was, like, this long. Like, no joke. Like, when you saw the fucking unicorn, it was just the head, and then the horn was, like, that much. Like, oh, shit, they're going to use this for something. You know? And then, as she gave her the gift and everything, for some reason, I don't know why the film did this. It went, you know, back into a flashback of what happened with Billy, right? It shows it's 1990. His mom is trying to have sex with her boyfriend. He falls asleep because he's drunk, and then she's like, fuck, not again! So she hears this rocking chair up in the attic. And this is where it, like, mentally fucks me up, because I'm just like, oh, shit, what's going to happen, right? So she goes up, unlocks it. She sees Billy's like rocking the chair. She's wearing nothing but a fucking bathrobe. And all of a sudden it shows like her legs walking up, and then she drops the bathrobe, and then it shows the chair rocking. And I was like, oh, no fucking way. Next scene, it was like 9 months later. Boom. She got pregnant from Billy, and they had a baby, and they played a lot on that incest. I was just like, what? Like, he's not crazy because, he had incest sex with his mom. It was just like, whoa, what the fuck? I mean, they just, they wanted to turn the crazy factor up, and boy, did they, because a lot of people didn't like that, For me, personally, I love gore films. I love the slashing, gashing, all that good stuff, but when it showed that scene, I was just like, whoa, okay. It turned me away from the film for a long time because of that scene. But anyways, it shows that the baby's born. They named the baby Agnes. The boyfriend thinks it's his baby when he doesn't really know. And then she turns around and she hears like all these sounds, the mom. And then she says, well, Agnes is my family now. And that was the tagline of this whole film, that they always said, they're my family now. Like, if you did a fucking shot game on this, like, you'd be passed out within like 20 minutes of it. Because they say that fucking saying so many times, right? After they show that whole scene, then it goes back to Eve. And then, the house mother, she was like, okay, well, before you leave, let me get you your gift. So she grabs the gift, turns around, Eve was already gone. And it's like, what the fuck? And there was just like a note and shit on the floor, but they never explained it. It was kind of weird. And then after that, they start kind of bickering on things. And then they start hearing, not start hearing, but they start getting these random phone calls of like people, this one person calling up, reenacting everything you just saw. Like, what are you doing, Billy? And it was good voice acting. They said, get out of my house or I'll kill you all. And that's when they're kind of debating, well, should we call the police? Should we not call the police? They're all like, they're not going to do shit in the snowstorm, which is kind of true, for one phone call. But, I mean, that's the rules of the horror film, right? So they keep getting these phone calls, and then all of a sudden they kept getting them from, like Claire's cell phone, or they get it from Megan's cell phone. And I said, what the fuck? Why is Megan, calling from the house phone when she's upstairs in her room? It doesn't make sense, right? So she goes up there. Then it ends up being Kyle. He had broke in, and Kelly starts screaming. And then all the girls run up. And then they're all like, oh, it's just Kyle. He's just coming in to see Kelly. And they're kind of like bickering. And then that's when he's like being kind of a dick, where he's like, oh, you bitches come over here. And this is the house that we were afraid of when I was a kid. And then he completed the whole story of telling what happened with Billy. And basically it happened in 1993, they said in the movie, right? Because they modernized all this. Everything happened in the 70s all the way up until 2006, the present day, when this film was released. So they basically, showed the story, or he explained it and said what had happened. And it was during Christmas Day, and, the mom was just so crazy about Agnes, she got her anything and everything that she wanted. Then all of a sudden, she goes to the kitchen, was going to make cookies. She hears a phone call. Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Hello, I said Merry Christmas! I was laughing at that scene because I know most of us don't answer the phone like that. They basically say hello or what, And then that's when you hear Billy's voice, she's my family now. Then they start running, and then they see that Agnes is missing from the Christmas tree. Then all of a sudden it shows Agnes and her boyfriend. They run up in the attic and they say, what are you doing with Agnes? Then all of a sudden they hear Agnes scream. They run down there, and Billy had already put the bag on her, and he had beat the shit out of her. And he pulled out her eyeball, and it shows that he got the eyeball and puts it in his mouth and crushes it. That's when the stepdad, tries to come in. He gets one of the, I guess it was like the point of the star. He pulls it out and just jabs it right through his face. And it was just like, whoa, what the fuck? And Billy completely snapped because he pulled the lights off the fucking Christmas tree, wraps it around his mom, chokes her out, drags her into the kitchen, gets the, I guess you could say, like the like the dough roller, and he beats the shit out of her. Just like, not a few times, it just whack, 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 until it kept zooming in to like all the cookies. And then all of a sudden he throws it back on the counter, he gets the cookie cutter, cuts her skin off, puts it on a tray, and heats it up. And then he eats her skin like fucking cookies. It was crazy. Then it showed that, the police come in and they see that he's like eating her fucking skin like cookies. And that's when they Kyle had basically said, they locked him up in the sanitarium and no one's ever heard of him since. And Agnes, after all the shit that she's been through, they put her in foster care. No one adopted her and no one's heard of her since, right? So they basically implied of like the whole backstory at this point, right? Once that whole thing happened, then basically he was just like, F you bitches, I'm out of here. So he leaves, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, why is the power out? Because the power goes off. And then Dana, played by Lacey Chabert, she says, well, the fuse box is outside of the house. I'll go get it, right? So she goes out. She starts hearing noises, and she thinks it's Eve. And she's like, Eve, you stupid bitch, I can see your breath. That's when she gets pulled in by the killer, and then they start struggling. She gets, like, one of those little hand shovels with, like, the fucking pokers and shit. I guess it's, like, to dig a trench and shit for when you garden. And then just stabbed it right in the back of her neck, right? And then all of a sudden, it goes quiet. And then all of a sudden, it's still dark in the house. Then all of a sudden, she calls from Dana's cell phone, and then it's the same thing. They have, like, the weird phone calls. And they're like, what the fuck? They go outside to see what the hell's going on. They see everybody's cars is still there. No one left, but, it's kind of odd. Like, all their cars are there, but they're not in the house. So they start questioning things. So they go to Eve's car, and they're like, what the fuck is she doing? Sitting in her car. Like, it's cold outside. She's going to freeze. So they open the door, and they see that Eve's head pops out. Then they freak out and they go back in the house and they said, okay, we're going to call the cops. They call the cops. Cops said they can't come, because of the blizzard. And then that's when the house mom and then Heather, Mary Elizabeth Winston, they said, okay, we're going to run to the police station and see what we can do. And, it's funny because the house mom, she gets in her car and tries to start it. Come on, start, you piece of shit. I laugh at it because in every horror film, most horror films are like that, And then finally she gets it started. She kicks open the door, because it's an old-ass station wagon. I don't know, like, it was weird. Like, they had a lot of old stuff in there, tied in with new modern stuff, and then they dated it. It kind of very odd to me. And I heard that was a knock from everybody that watched it, that they didn't like that. But, for me, it was just like, okay, they try to make it look old. I deal with it. They get in the car, and then that's when... she pulls out a brush and she tells her, like, Heather, hey, I need you to, use this. And she's like, what is that for? And, she's raised in the South, so she doesn't ever have to scrub windows off from snow. So the house mom, she comes out, Andrea Martin, she's like, damn Southern Belle Prince. She acted like a damn princess, and she's scraping off all the shit. And all of a sudden, the car starts rocking. And then she's like, what the fuck? She scrapes the window more, and she sees Billy's face, and she's freaking out. And then all of a sudden, blood splatters everywhere. So Heather gets fucking killed, but they don't show it. They just show blood splatter all over. And then you see Andrea Martin, like, she goes back to the house mom, like, freaking out, hits the garage. Icicle comes through, goes right through her face. And that was kind of a callback to, A Christmas Story, how they said icicles can kill you and stuff like that. And then I thought it was pretty crazy, because here, Mary Elizabeth Winston, she always plays these characters where she's the final girl, right? But then she gets killed off like halfway into the movie. It's like, whoa, okay, anything could happen now. And I think they did that on purpose, so that way she doesn't get like typecast into being like the final girl in most horror films. And then as that's happening, all the other girls are like looking through the window like, what the fuck is happening? Why is the car on? So then you see Kelly go down, and then Claire, her sister Lee, had came over. And, she had came over and she came in at the wrong time. Like, it was like in the middle of everything that was going on. So they go down there, they slip in the garage, and they see all this puddle of blood. And they're like, what the fuck? That's when the girl who played Harriet the Spy, what was her name? God, I can't remember her name. But I know she was one of the main characters in there. She goes and tries to see, like, what the hell was going on. She gets taken out by the killer, who basically, tries to grab her in the bag, and then they elbow her. Then she tries to run out, and then she gets like the ski stick and beats the shit out of her. And what I thought this was pretty cool, she finally gets the door open. The killer grabs the like ice skates and throws it right at her, and you can see like chunks of her head and shit fly off. Which I was like, whoa, okay, this is pretty cool. I can deal with this. This is pretty cool, Then the girl who was drinking, she had drank so much that she had thrown up and everything, and she was passed out in the room. And then that's when the killer goes in there. She sees that she's asleep and keeps fucking with her, right? She turns around and sees that it's nothing. And all of a sudden the killer comes in. And remember I was telling you about that hand-blown glass unicorn with that fucking horn that long? Yeah, that came into play. It just gouged out both fucking eyes. So now you only have 2 girls left. And all of a sudden they get in the house, and then they find Lindsay that way, her eyes gouged out. And then you see that it was, what's his name? Kyle. He comes in and he's like, hey, there's 2 dead bodies in the front. They're all like, well, maybe you did it. Well, then they start bickering, right? And then they figure out, okay, somebody's here in the house that's killing all of us, because, you know, I'm calling her cell phone even though she's dead, and you can kind of see it. And then they said, all right, fuck it, we'll go up in the attic. If they're dead, we get the fuck out of here. So out of all things, they go in the attic, and then that's when they see everybody dead. You know, parts of them are all cut up, like decorated. And then you find out that the main killer that's doing it is Agnes. Agnes was, you know, Billy and his mom's baby, who they didn't explain much. They just showed that she was just crazy like Billy and just started gutting everybody up. So when they go in there, Kyle, he's the first one who gets killed. You know, they get the bag on him and he gets gouged out in the eye. Then that's when Kelly and Lee, they go up there. They kind of, I guess you could say, battle it out a little bit. And then Lee falls through the roof. Then all of a sudden, that's when Billy comes in, and it's like, what the fuck, Billy's here? So you have two killers, which is the big twist in all this. That was not in the original, by the way. They had the twist of bringing the two killers. And then, you know, when all that was going on, the tree caught on fire because it was a real tree. And then Kelly tries to go and tries to get Lee. And then, I guess, what's her name? Agnes had fell through, like, in between the cracks. So Agnes is on the bottom, Billy's on the top, Kelly's stuck in the middle, and she's like banging on the wall and shit. Lee finally breaks the wall down, pulls her out, and then, you know, the flaming tree comes down, burns them, they throw paint thinner. Then it shows that they're in the hospital, and you think everything's all fine and dandy, right? Then all of a sudden they take Kelly away to do some x-rays, and then, you know, Lee's in there and she starts hearing noises, and then she goes to another room. She's like, Kelly, I thought they took you for x-rays. Fucking Agnes! It was Agnes out of all things. They survived the fucking fire. So they, you know, Agnes grabs Lee and says, you know, they're my family now. Breaks her neck, right? So the only person that's still alive is Kelly at this point. Then all of a sudden Kelly gets back. She's like, where's Lee? And they're like, well, I don't know. I'm probably in the bathroom. And then that's when she starts hearing noises. And then that's when Agnes pops out. She gets one of those, what do you call it, defibrillators. Charges it up and just shocks the shit out of her. And finally kills Agnes, right? And then that's when, you know, she starts hearing thumping sounds. Breaks out of the hospital and everything. And then that's when Billy starts chasing after her. He's all fucking burnt to a crisp. And then they start struggling on the side, you know, right there on the hallway where it goes down to like a stairway. And that's when she flips him over. Billy lands on a Christmas tree. And literally, I don't know if this was a real Christmas tree or a fake one, but he lands on a Christmas tree, goes right through him. All his guts and everything spills out. And that's the end of the film. And I was just like, what? Like, you could have done a better ending than that. Like, what the fuck? You know, and that's what I bring back to, you know, my original point at the beginning of this episode. That this film was great in some aspects, but it was also bad at some other ones. And the reason why it was bad is because, you know, he had Dimension Films, who was run by I was going to say Harvey Weinstein, but both Weinstein brothers, but Harvey Weinstein in particular. He didn't like the original, and he wanted to follow the trend of what Saw was doing. You know, because Saw had changed horror films into torture porn, and they had to show, like, more gore, more intense shit and everything. You know, I basically turn up the notch a lot, you know, the intensity, right? So there was a lot of scenes that got changed over. I mean, there's like 4 different endings, and each different country got a different ending. It was weird. And they did the original ending, like a callback to the original where they get a phone call. And I thought that would have been pretty cool. Just end it on an open note that, hey, they survived, but you don't know what happened to them. So, because then you leave it open for a sequel if you decide to do that, right? In other countries, you know, they show that everybody dies, but then it showed in the added scene of, like, you know, Billy was already dead. Agnes is the only one that was still alive. She killed Agnes, and then she leaves the hospital, and that was the end of the film. Like, what the fuck? You know, and out of all the research I've done, they said the reason being is because Harvey Weinstein was basically saying, okay, well, I'm funding it. I want it done this way. I want it done that way. And they try to overhype the film. And Glen Morgan, he didn't like that. You know, there are some scenes that they had to reshoot like 3 or 4 times for some of the death scenes. You know, one in particular was when the skates go through the head. That was filmed secretly behind a lot of the people's backs because they didn't like the fact that, you know, Agnes, the original death was they would come out with Agnes, puts the bag on, takes her out, rips out her eyeball, and it's no creativity, you know? So they figured, okay, well, let's do it with the skate, you know, the ice skates and throw it on the head, which I thought was a lot better. Then the ending where Billy falls into the Christmas tree and his guts spill out, I'm like, okay, that's cool, you know, but it's I could do without, you know? I mean, the ending, how they left it, where they run out of the house, that would have been perfect for me. You know, I would have been fine with that. But everybody all had their hands in the cookie jar. And that's was kind of the downfall of this film. It really was. Because when it came out, everyone was just like, what? There's different endings? You know? So when they released it on the DVD, they basically, you know, they had the unrated at the time. Unrated and rated. I bought the unrated and watched that full version. And it was okay, you know. You had the ending where Billy goes through and the tree cuts right through him. But what I thought was interesting was the fact that they included all the deleted scenes. And they didn't include some of the television promotion, which that's another story of its own. I'll tell you in a sec. But when they released the DVD, like it's a head scratcher. Like, why film all this footage and then like make 4 or 5 different versions released? Like, there's no point into it. And a lot of people didn't like that, you know. And that's why it kind of, you know, fell through the cracks, and a lot of people didn't like it, you know. And then, you know, back to the television promotions, they didn't think the film was going to do good. So what they did is that they hired completely different actors who weren't even a part of this movie to film trailers or like television spots, you know, like to hype up the movie. And they filmed completely different scenes that weren't even in the movie. It's like false advertisement. I mean, you saw that a couple of times. Like, you would see it's an alternate scene, like in Freddy vs. Jason, you know, where they show in the trailer where she's like, place your bets, you know. They don't say that in the film, but they say it for the trailer, right? And, you know, for me, I'm okay with it because it's like, oh, okay, it's an alternate take, whatever, you know. But when they filmed the trailers for TV and for the movies and stuff, they basically shot different scenes that weren't even in the movie. You know, they show like Lindsay grabbing a shotgun, cocking it, Merry Christmas, motherfucker. You know, they filmed that scene. They filmed another scene where Dana was played by a different actor, and she sees another frozen body like in a lake. Like, what the fuck? And then they showed like somebody was on a roof, and then they slide down, you know, and they got tangled up with the Christmas lights, and they hang themselves. Like, that would have been cool, but it was all false advertisement, you know? It was just to hype up everybody to go see the film. And that was another thing I think, you know, brought down the film a lot, because they filmed a lot of scenes like that for, like, promotional stuff, but they never released it in the movie theater. So it's basically false advertisement, if you look at it that way, you know? And I don't remember it. I mean, I tried looking for it on YouTube. There's some grainy videos of you can actually see it, because I don't think it was released on the DVD. And I went through, and it was just like, what the fuck? Are you serious? So, I mean, there's a lot of good, there was a lot of bad, and it's unfortunate, really, because this film, I mean, for a remake, for a wink back to the original, it was good for what it was. But, and, you know, when you find out the whole backstory of it, it kind of makes you think, like, wow, you know, like, I learned to appreciate it more. Like, they went through all these struggles to try to fix it, and got what they could out of it, you know? And for me, I always enjoyed it, and I know a lot of people are like, well, how come you didn't talk about the original? Well, the original one was great, don't get me wrong, but it was 1974. Yes, it did start all the whole horror genre, the slasher genre, but at the same time, like, I wanted to talk about the newer one, because the newer one, like I said, it really fucked me up. Like, they turned the intensity way up on that. You know, if I'm not a squeamish person, so I mean, a lot of the gore scenes didn't get to me, but when they showed the whole thing about, like, having 2 killers, because, you know, there was incest involved where Billy's mom had raped him and had a baby with him. Like, it was like, what the fuck? And then, you know, like, that really fucked with me a lot. Like, I didn't watch the film but more than 2 or 3 times before I did this episode. So I was like, whoa, okay. The fact they had too much going on. And also, too, the fact that they didn't explain Agnes a little bit more, which was kind of, you know, kind of a disappointment to me a little bit, because, you know, she had been through all that, but they didn't show why she had snapped and did the same things that Billy did. You know, it was weird. Like, you know, you explained all this about Billy, but why not on Agnes? You know, and they never shot the footage. They never included it, you know? And so, when this film came out, obviously it didn't do too well. Bob Clark said, okay, he was going to try and do a sequel from the original. And when he, you know, barely started to get going, it was unfortunate, you know, he had passed away. So we will never see the light of day of, you know, what he was planning and things like that. And, you know, for the longest time, everybody forgot about Black Christmas until I brought it back up. You know, because honestly, I really enjoyed the film. It was different for its time. You know, during the mid-2000s, you had a lot of random remakes that were just like, you know, or you had random horror films that came out, you know, Urban Legend, Cry Wolf, you know. All these random films, you don't see that much anymore because, I mean, they all release them in Redbox. They put them on Netflix or Hulu, you know. They're like low-budget horror films. And, you know, Black Christmas, I think, was one of the last of those films, I think, that really came out in theaters that really stood out, you know. But, I mean, you know, who knows? Personally, for me, I enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of the remake of Black Christmas. I know a lot of people are going to be like, it was okay, but my point being, like, I know, for me, I can enjoy it, I can watch it. It's just, I mean, during the holidays, I could probably deal with it, but out of the holidays, But thank you all for tuning in for this episode on Black Christmas. As I said, hope you're all enjoying your holidays. I know it's Christmas Eve going into Christmas Day. So if you're watching this on Christmas Day, Merry Christmas. Not only from me, but also from Misery the Pig. And I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Alright? And I'll catch you all next time, as always.